Hello, everyone. Welcome to Real Conversations in the QC. I'm Redrick Terry. On today's show, we're discussing mental health. It's an issue that impacts people of all kinds all across the country and the world. And we know there's help for people who need it, but it isn't always necessarily easy to find that help, especially for people of color. According to the National Institutes of Health, among adults with diagnosis-based need for mental health or substance abuse care, 37.6% of whites receive treatment. Of that group of people who are Black, only 25% of them receive treatment. We're going to look into that issue today and highlight solutions here in the Quad Cities. We'll speak with two QCA mental health professionals about why those numbers exist and how important representation is in the mental health field. We'll learn also how some police departments are learning how to deal with calls that might include people who are struggling with different techniques that might better fit the issue. We'll also tag along with a group that just started with the goal of helping Black men through the use of nature. All of that and so much more is coming up today, but let's start with the representation factor in this issue. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, in 2019, close to 70% of U.S. social workers and 88% of mental health counselors were white. Now, that could lead to some apprehension from some people of color to seek mental health treatment. We sat down with two mental health professionals here in the area about the impact that has and what can be done about it. So let's talk a little bit more about representation in the field of mental health. And to do that, we are delighted to be joined by Dr. Sharon Lash and Cynthia Green with South Park Psychology. Thank you both for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Now, you both have extensive backgrounds in the fields of mental health. So just tell us about, how you got here, what got you interested in this field, and how it's led you to where you are today.
I'm Dr. Sharon Lash, and I've worked in this area at South Park Psychology for 30 years, but I've been in the mental health field for about 40 years. I've always liked to work with people, and psychology has always been a passion, even when I was young, junior high, high school. And I've gotten training in different cities. I've worked in Connecticut, Texas, Quad Cities, and I've had several places I've worked throughout the country and had different exposures to different approaches to therapy.
And I was always the girl who was giving advice. And as a child, they said, you should be a counselor because you're always giving advice. And so they were right. I went to school and I became a therapist. And it's just something I've always enjoyed, helping people. It's really my passion. I started off at Black Hawk College as a case manager, became a counselor there, and left there after retiring from there and came to South Park. I've been there 19 years now. Love what I do.
And you said something important there. Helping people is really at the core of what you both do.
Yeah.
Tell me, what is that feeling that you get when you know that you've helped someone, or when maybe you have one of your patients come back to you and say, wow, this really helped me. You helped me so much. What does that feel like to you guys?
Well, it's rewarding. I'd say rewarding.
I agree.
And I think most of our jobs is helping them to help themselves, giving them the credit for the growth.
Yes. Yeah, because clients are very resilient. They come in with problems, but they come in with a lot of resources that we capitalize with our skills to help. So they do a lot of the work. We do it collaboratively using our skills to help them. So,
now, obviously, mental health is something that impacts every demographic, every type of person from every background. But, when you talk about specific people, maybe people of color to be specific, there are a certain set of circumstances that might be a little bit more common to that group as opposed to other groups. What are some of those things that you've noticed in your work?
Well, my sense and experience says, especially with minority populations in particular, Black clients, is the same challenges that they have in other institutions like educational institutions, work settings, will present in the therapy room. So if there's misperceptions about being understood by dominant culture, for example, it could hinder the trust process, and that's the essential ingredient for having progress in therapy.
And there's always been a distrust towards psychology in general, especially in our population, for good reason, our history. And so it's been a kind of a hurdle to get people to accept and embrace counseling or just mental health services to begin with. And I grew up in a culture where what goes on in this house stays in this house. or you went to church and you prayed about it, and that's how it was left. And so I'm glad to see that that's changing now, because people are dealing with a lot of things. And I've had clients come in who were dealing with just really blatant racism in the workplace, toxic work environment. And it's important for them to have someone who understands their culture, can relate, and help them, with some coping strategies.
Yeah. And again, that's a very good point. When you talk about that distrust that some might have, it might help, suggestively speaking, it might help to see someone who looks more like you. So when you talk about that representation factor, which is something that can be said across many fields, certainly not just the mental health field, but when you talk about that representation, where are we in terms of having that in the mental health field?
I read some statistics that says 4% of therapists, I think in the U.S., if I'm not mistaken, self-identify as Blacks, and about 72% identify as whites. So there's a higher amount of white therapists than there are Black therapists. So that if you think of that, white therapists are likely to have to interface with a Black client. And so those same issues, again, that you have that are challenged by misperceptions and distrust and dominant culture, you have to reconcile that. And of course, our professions do require that we, to take classes in cultural competence, so that you will be able to have a knowledge base of the culture and traditions and rituals, that you have a capacity to empathize with the challenges that are faced with a Black client and dominant culture, and sensitive to when that presents itself in the therapy room. And so we're all required to take those continuing education, most professional organizations. But I think also the best is, perhaps, whites from dominant culture can just go hang out in Black communities, for example, go to the churches, go to the community events, ask a Black coworker to lunch. There's natural ways that you can accumulate that understanding, and that would benefit in the therapy room as well.
And I guess that brings us to the next question, because we're not suggesting that a white therapist or psychologist can't treat
certainly not
a Black client.
No.
That's not the case. Not. But that comfortability factor certainly does play a part in that client coming to you in the first place. So how do we work towards improving those numbers in terms of that representation, having more Black therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists in this field?
I just think that, again, when you go, like me, when I was in high school, junior high in the 70s, I saw Rob Newhart. He wasn't a Black therapist, but it was my model for, there's a psychology profession and he's doing it, and I like that. So I think exposure, in your early years to all possible professions, and if someone's interested in psychologist profession, then good. But yeah, early exposure, counselors educating, giving people options, us going around others and telling people that this is a possibility for example, minority youth to pursue, and just being a good therapist in our work, because people would say, I had a good experience, so I think I want to be a therapist too.
And for me, it's word of mouth and doing job fairs, career fairs. I do a lot of speaking engagements in church, and so that, again, lets people know we're there and available. And some people say, I didn't know you were in the community. I'm like, yes, there's more than me. So just getting the word out there. And when people have a good experience, like Dr. Lashes, they share that with their beautician, their neighbors, their family members, and then they tell people.
Absolutely. And, you mentioned earlier, Cynthia, about the stigma that surrounds mental health, which, again, is an issue among many different groups of people, but particularly in the Black community. There's that stigma that seeking out mental health treatment, it can be some form of weakness. As you mentioned, that is starting to change, but where are we exactly in terms of changing that, of breaking that down, and of getting more people the treatment that they need?
Well, I think in the church, it's changing. I got a lot of referrals from pastors, so they're recognizing that just the spiritual counseling may not be sufficient. So I see it changing from the church and in the community as well. I think there's more of an openness. I certainly see it a lot more. And people ask questions. And I think part of my job when I'm doing presentations in the community is to normalize their feelings that, no, you're not crazy, you're stable, everybody has issues. And to make it okay. And say, come and see me, talk to me.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So in terms of looking ahead to the future and having some of that representation in this field a little bit more, what needs to happen in your mind in order to make things a little bit more even in terms of having more people that look like their clients servicing them in the field?
I agree with, again, what we said before of exposure and word of mouth doing a good job and having people come in. I would like to see personally, I'd like to see screenings at a doctor's level, MD level, school have some way to screen for people that could potentially be having trouble in other environments. I don't think mental health people can do it by itself, but if other environments would have some kind of way of saying, oh, I think you could benefit from help, let me send you here, and it not just be with us. I think it takes a village in this kind of situation to have everyone be able to identify people who are in need.
And in addition to that, I think colleges and universities could do maybe a better job of recruiting and getting people of color into this profession. I mean, I just think there's just not enough of us. And I don't know if there's one answer to resolve that issue, but I think everybody could do a better job of making sure, because mental health is not going away. And so we need to be able to address it.
Absolutely. So for those people who might be out there and might be struggling with their mental health and might be maybe afraid, timid, concerned about getting some of those services, what do you say to them?
Well, once they get to me, they are ready, and I still have to do some work for them to be. But for the people out there, I would say, yes, go online and read up what's involved. You know, people feel more comfortable doing it by themselves before they tell people. A lot of people are online and, type in, what happens in therapy and expose and then talk to friends and family about what you've read and help them to support you to make a decision. But I think that they have to reach out for other people, family, friends, resources, just to prepare and to get ready.
And I think that money used to be a big factor. I can't afford that, living paycheck to paycheck or what have you. And I think it's much more affordable. And a lot of agencies are providing services, sliding scale, free of charge. And so I think letting people know there are resources there. You can get therapy, it can be affordable. And transportation is changing well because we have now telehealth services. Thanks to COVID, we can now do telehealth. And so it's not so much of a barrier as it was in the past.
Absolutely. Cynthia agreeing. Dr. Sharon Lash, thanks so much for being with us today. We really appreciate the conversation.
Thank you. Nice being here.
As we've talked about already, mental health is a wide-reaching issue that touches almost everyone in some way, even when it's someone close to you who may be struggling. So what are some of the best ways to be there for and be supportive of a family member or a loved one who might be dealing with their own set of internal issues? For that conversation, here's Tim Stinson.
Real Conversations, experience of people of color in the Quad City area here. Today we are here with Simone Collins. Welcome, Simone.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, Simone. Now, I want to make sure I get everything right here. You are a licensed therapist. If there's other letters or words go with that, let me know. Why don't you explain to us what?
Yes. So I graduated with my master's in 2021. So I'm still working towards my full licensure.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a temporarily licensed mental health counselor in Iowa, which means I'm under the supervision of a fully licensed counselor. I can't practice independently yet.
Mm-hmm.
Got a year and a half to go for that. And then I have my temporary license, my LPC, in Illinois as well. And I'm a nationally certified counselor. I'm a grief specialist and a trauma specialist.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. In the Quad City area, and you are a native of Quad City area.
Born and raised in Rock Island,
Born and
yes.
raised. And as we were talking about, your mom and dad also.
Yeah.
All right. Wonderful. Being in the Quad Cities area and speaking on mental health, the education that you're going through now and what you see, is it what's the stigma behind mental health? How people's thoughts about it, or what are you seeing?
So I would say the stigma is definitely probably decreased throughout my life.
Mm-hmm.
People are more willing to talk about mental health concerns, get help for it. There's definitely a shortage of therapists, especially therapists of color, especially Black therapists in the area. But there's never really a shortage of clients. So that's a positive thing. I do have more Black clients than I would have ever dreamed of having, to be honest. So that's also great. But I would say that people A lot of the stigmas that people don't realize that mental health is a real thing. Like people will say it's all in your head, which is true. It is in your head. It's in your brain, and your brain is an organ, just like other organs in your body. And it's okay to treat your brain as if you would treat your stomach or your kidneys or your bladder or whatever. But I think just like a lack of awareness, and people not realizing, you know, how much your mental health drives the rest of your body. Like it's in your brain. And like if your brain dead, you're dead. So your brain is a very important organ of your body. So
Right.
yes.
You mentioned that there's a lack of people of color who are in the therapist positions and stuff. Is that something that drove you to or pushed you to become a therapist? Or let's talk a little bit about that. What made you start moving in this field?
So when I decided to become a therapist, I was 16 years old. I didn't think about the color dynamic really. My mom actually was diagnosed with bipolar disorder after my brother was born. And so like growing up, seeing her in the hospital, going through the system and that is probably that is definitely what encouraged me. She's my whole motivation of why I wanted to work in the mental health field. And then as I went through college, and I went to college in a very, I just say racist town. Felt like I was in the 1950s, let me tell you. It was interesting, but I think that is what drove like the social justice aspect of it, that experience. And then like through grad school, I saw that there really are a lot of disparities when it comes to therapy for people of color and by people of color.
Okay.
Yes.
You mentioned your mom having some issues there as you were growing up and stuff. As you know, I also have someone in my family, that has some mental health issues as well. And I see what that does for that immediate family. I want to touch on a little bit of that, you know, and especially with, you know, you personally, but also what you see in the Quad Cities, because some people think it's just this person has a mental health issue and they're the only ones dealing with it. But talk about how it affects the family.
Absolutely. So my mom, with her specific bipolar disorder, she's like fine 90% of the time, like no issues. And then like once every few years or so, she'll go into a manic state or a super depressive state. I would say, you know, being a kid, it was kind of scary. Not that she ever did anything scary herself, like she wasn't abusive or anything like that. It was just, my mom isn't my mom right now. Little weird. I was like the main person that could convince her to get treatment. And I was a kid, teenager. So that was a lot of pressure. Like being the one that was responsible. I'm the oldest and a girl. So there you go.
There you go.
There you go. And I would say as I got older and became an adult, the getting hospitalized is a lot harder than it used to be. Like when I was a kid, we could, as long as she was voluntary, she could get admitted. Now you have to be actively homicidal or suicidal. And my mother has never been suicidal or homicidal until the last few years, because she got to that point because they wouldn't hospitalize her. And going through that system of trying to get my mom the care that she needs and then listening was just, it's very aggravating. Like trying to find the hospital, like the same hospital that I went to when I was 10 with her. And it would be no problem. She was like the main block to getting in. Otherwise they would take her. Now it's like, she has to be suicidal in the moment. I personally feel like that's telling someone if they have stage 1 cancer, wait till you have stage 4 cancer to get treatment. So, but I would say that, you know, her taking time off of work, it would impact finances, whatever symptoms that came with it. And of course, like if you have a family with mental health diagnoses, you will most likely have a mental health diagnoses as well. So like there is a genetic component as well, or just like the trauma that you experience because of their mental health diagnoses can impact you as well.
Okay. So in the Quad City area with people of color that's dealing with this issue now, have you seen that because of COVID? And we were talking earlier, a lot of things with COVID has caused a lot of people anxieties, and you know, people are noticing, you know, situations with mental health. Has it seemed to always been a situation with people of color in the Quad Cities with mental health, or is this something that we're seeing is coming more to the forefront now?
I want to say like yes to both. Like there's always
Okay.
been an issue,
Mm-hmm.
but people didn't talk about it, or people, the pull yourself up by the bootstraps mentality. And I know like the Black church is a big influence, and the Black church has come a long ways. But growing up in the Black church with a biracial mother
Mm-hmm.
with bipolar disorder, being raised that she was demon possessed
Oh, wow. Okay.
instead of being sick, that is a really big thing. So it's like you don't want to go get help because you're demon possessed when you're just sick. Like being diabetic isn't demon possessed, is it? So why is bipolar disorder being demon possessed? So I say that's, and then like, all you need is Jesus. Like that's a, common
That was
phrase.
your- yes,
Yes,
yeah.
all you need
We
is
grew up
Jesus.
with
It's
that,
okay
yeah.
to have Jesus and a therapist. And I remember I forgot his name, and I really feel bad that I forgot his name, but he was actually friends with Dr. Martin King Jr. He came here and spoke at a conference a few years ago, and he's a reverend and a doctor as well. And he'd asked me like, what are you going to school for? What are you doing? I'm like, I want to be a therapist. And my master's program for be a therapist. And his response was, Jesus did mental health work. So
Mhm.
keep going for it. And I'm
Mhm.
like,
There-
that completely changed my concept
yeah.
of mental health. Like, oh yeah, he did. Or like how the church relates to mental health, I should say. I'm like, oh yeah, he did do a lot of mental health and emotional work. You're right. Like
mhm.
he doesn't shun it. Like I feel like he created therapists for a reason. So
I want to move on because you are, and want everyone to know too, that Simone is the board president, organization called How About Hope.
yes.
Explain to us a little bit, educate us a little bit about what is How About Hope.
Yes. So how about Hope? Hope standing for helping others and providing encouragement. I would say it was born out of Love Girls magazine. I'm not sure if you've heard of that. But it was born out of a sticker campaign that my friend Michaela did. And she created this organization with stickers like I have hope because, and then she decided to make it an actual thing about mental health. And she actually used it as her platform for Miss Iowa.
Yes.
She is the founder and director of How About Hope. And basically it's a space to create conversations about mental health, like sustaining conversations, bringing light to them, making people comfortable, having those conversations, getting help. Like we're not a therapy organization by any means. Would I like to provide therapy through How About Hope? Maybe, but I'd have to be fully licensed for
Okay,
that.
okay.
But just letting people be their authentic selves. We do like things with like artistic expression. Like I've performed spoken word at events. We've had people sing, other poets, and we have had people come provide education for the events. And we usually raise money to, we just do that just to have a place for people that feel safe. And we've had people that are like random people that just come off the street and like, oh yeah, I've had all these mental health things and I would like to share about it and perform something. And it's like, oh, okay. And it always feels like a family friendly atmosphere when the people come together.
So if someone wants to get a hold of you there or get a hold of someone there, how, is it through website? Should they call, or how would you suggest?
So we have Facebook, we have a website, howabouthope.com. You can email us at howabouthope@gmail.com. My personal email for How About Hope is president@howabouthope.com. We have a Facebook page, we have an Instagram page. So yes, we are very much out there where you can get a hold of us. We don't
Right.
actually have a phone number just of yet, but
Right.
yes.
Right. Kind of wrapping things up, this whole segment this month, Real Conversations, is regards to mental health.
Yeah.
So wrapping things up for our viewers who are watching, who are listening, what can you say to them? How can you help them if they feel they have a loved one, they think that maybe they might have some anxieties or mental health, other issues and stuff? What's the next step then? How should they move forward in this?
Absolutely. I would say finding a therapist is a great place to start. Most therapists accept all insurances. One, when you find a therapist, if you don't like that therapist, you do not have to stay with the therapist. You can shop around. I know that seems like a lot of work, but it's your mental health and you can find one that clicks for you. And also remembering that like when you go to therapy, it is completely confidential. So nobody has to know that you're doing it. There are times when we have to break confidentiality, like if you're a danger to yourself,
Okay.
like if you're suicidal, like we would call your emergency contact or maybe call the hospital so you could get hospitalized. And if there are other reasons why we'd break confidentiality, but we wouldn't normally I haven't never had to break confidentiality really. So
Okay.
for those instances, I would, but like I've never, I mean, I don't break confidentiality because that's protected under confidentiality, but nobody has to know. And like, unfortunately, when it comes to talking to friends and stuff, they don't have the same confidentiality laws, and they might be great friends, but doesn't mean that they might not talk about what you're going through. Or you might not just want to feel like you want to dump on them or have the support. You want an outside person looking in, like just starting with therapy, and a therapist can help you find the resources that you need if you need more intense care.
Okay.
Yes.
So individuals don't have to feel embarrassed. They don't have to,
No.
feel that someone's going to make fun of them or whatever. But, if you see someone that seems like they need some help or they feel that they're struggling, to go find help,
Yep.
find assistance and stuff. So
Absolutely.
wonderful. Well, Simone, I appreciate the conversation. It was great meeting you off camera and as well as just having this conversation. So again, guys, I know the rest of Real Conversations, more information will be shared, but thanks for joining in. And thank you again, Simone.
Thank you for having me.
All right.
Dealing with mental health issues can be scary, even for adults, but for children, the fear of not knowing what's happening in your own head at times can be more difficult to deal with than we might be able to imagine. And that's why it's especially important to provide care for kids who need it. Our Kothi Adams leads that part of the conversation.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Kothi Adams, and here with Nicole Zook, the Executive Director of the Youth Service Bureau of Rock Island County. Thanks for joining us today, Nicole.
Thank you so much for having me. This is fantastic.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you guys provide some great options on the Illinois side of the river. Can you tell me a little bit more about, what you guys do, who you are, what you stand for?
Absolutely. So our mission, we were founded in 1972, so we've been around for 50 years. And since the beginning, our mission has always been to serve underserved communities. We were founded on concepts of social justice, and we've always advocated. We want to strengthen and empower youth, families, and communities through effective counseling, prevention, and leadership. That's our mission in a nutshell.
Awesome. That's awesome. I love that. So let's talk a bit. I know you just mentioned, kind of who you are, some of the things that you're doing in the community. You guys have two major branches. Can you expand on each of those a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. So the two major programs that we do juvenile delinquency prevention and family therapy. And family therapy, I'll talk about in a second. It's not just for families, but juvenile delinquency prevention is really close to my heart, and that's a really hot topic in the Quad Cities right now. We have a peer justice program that was founded 25 years ago because we know that scared straight doesn't work, and that's what the Quad Cities used to have.
Sure.
And so together with other social services, with schools, with law enforcement, with juvenile court services, we founded the Peer Justice Program, which is to provide first-time offenders for misdemeanors, status offenses, ordinance violations, minor things, a second chance, because kids make mistakes.
Right.
Everybody makes mistakes. And so the idea behind the program for Peer Justice is that kids get a chance to own those mistakes and make it right, instead of parents having to pay the consequences of a child's actions. They can come in and use our program. The police or juvenile court services will send us a referral, and they'll come through and they go in front of a jury of their peers. So we have local officers who volunteer as bailiffs, and we have licensed attorneys from John Deere has volunteers for us, and the state's attorney's office. And we go through court, and the kids take it very seriously. It's a legal process, and the child on the stand gets grilled by our jury, and they get a sentence that's fair. It's restorative. It's not meant to punish. And it might include things like counseling, letters of apology, but they have 60 days to complete it. And when they do, it's erased from their record. So it's like the ticket never happened. And it gives kids a fresh start, which is really needed and amazing.
Well, that's awesome. And like you said, that way it's not, kind of putting the parents at fault or having that lingering issue on a record to kind of come back and haunt you.
Absolutely.
And so you guys, you mentioned you've been around 50 years, and there's something special that you at one point were the only ones doing in Black neighborhoods. Can you expand on that a bit?
Absolutely. So I said a second ago, our family therapy program is for more than just families. We'll work with anybody. We work with individuals. We work with kids. We work with families. We work with couples. We work with groups. But we know that when we focus on the family, we get a lot better results. And we also know that some families are more likely than others to seek some support and help.
Sure.
And since we were founded, we've always made a huge effort to do outreach in minority communities. We were founded to serve low-income populations who didn't have access to help and didn't have sometimes the support that they needed, but definitely didn't have the ability to afford help.
Sure.
And so we would go out into neighborhoods, into communities, and our staff would, hang signs on doors. Hey, listen, we're not with DCFS. We're not with the
Sure.
police. We
Yeah.
don't work for the school. We're just here to provide support for kids and families. And so for the longest time too, we were the only people doing that, but we were also the only people providing therapy in schools, because we know that communities, especially communities of color and low income populations, cannot always access services. And part of that really is just logistical. So we work to break down those barriers. So for the longest time, we were also the only people in schools who were doing therapy, because when you have a single parent who is working 2 jobs to make ends meet because they don't have another choice, their child might really need services and they might be on board with that, but they can't get them to some office after school.
Right.
Or they may not have transportation to get them somewhere. And so our counselors have always gone into schools to
That's
work
awesome.
with kids with parents' permission, or we'll even go into homes when there are issues that prevent people from coming
Sure.
out.
That is awesome. No, that's great. And so, you kind of touched on it a little bit. Do you only see, kids? Do you see the adults and parents too? Is it reaching out to veterans, or is it strictly kids?
So we'll see anybody, any age. It's
Sure.
funny that you mentioned veterans, because I am one, but a lot of times we may not be the right support for them, right?
Sure.
We focus on kids because we want to be preventative. We know that when we can focus on kids and we can focus on families, we can make ripple effects that
Sure.
impact generations. If we're preventative, then we can help kids have better mental health and have parents have better support and parent the way they want to, and that lasts for a long time and help
Sure.
set them up for success. So we'll see anybody, any age. It's called the Youth Service Bureau because that's what we were founded for, and that's
Sure.
predominantly where we're going to focus. But the big thing that makes us unique in the Quad Cities is that we never turn anyone away based on
That's awesome.
inability to pay.
Yeah.
And so we do work mostly with kids because most of our referrals come from schools or from healthcare providers.
Sure.
But what's been really interesting in the past few years is that more and more referrals have been coming from parents themselves, and that more people are responding to referrals and accepting help or seeking help at higher rates.
That's awesome. And I should mention too, thank you for your service.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
a great job. Actually, one of the best parts I think about service for me, coming from a really small area,
Sure.
was that is one of the few places in the world where you see Black men and women in higher proportion
Oh, sure.
as leaders.
Right.
And that was a wonderful experience for me.
That is great. That's awesome. That's awesome. So, and then kind of tell me a little bit too, how do those, I know you mentioned some of the referrals, so if someone is seeking those services, how do they reach you?
So people can go through our website. It's just www.ysbri.com,
Sure.
stand for Youth Service Bureau, Rock Island. Or a lot of times we'll have people ask through their healthcare providers or even just through the school. Sometimes kids themselves know that they need some support,
Sure.
and we can offer them support just by asking their school counselor. We work really closely with all the schools in Rock Island County to
awesome.
work with their counseling departments, and kids can ask and they'll send us a referral, and we try to reach out within 24 hours.
Awesome. And so, Nicole, obviously we can't mention any families or any kids by name, but can you talk a bit about some of the positive results that you've had? You've seen?
Absolutely. One of my favorite things that we do as part of our juvenile delinquency prevention is the interventions program.
Sure.
And those are kids who are referred by juvenile court services only. And it's a 6-month program. And we do some life skills with them, and we bring them into our office on Mondays and
Yeah.
have dinner, because a lot of the kids we serve are food insecure.
Sure.
And then on Wednesdays, we kind of take them out into the community and do some different things.
That's
And
great.
for me, coming from a counseling background,
Yeah.
those are my favorite kids to work with, because those are the kids with the rap sheet, and those are the kids that other people point a finger at and go, that's a bad kid. Well, we
Right.
know better. There are no bad kids. There are bad choices.
Right.
And those are the kids often that a lot of times they're tough, and they'll sit down with me on day one. I'm not talking to no effing counselor. And
Yeah.
I'll say, great. That's not what I'm here for.
Right.
I'm a therapist, but that's not what I'm there for. And they'll kind of share why over time, because they've had a bad experience with somebody who didn't understand their culture
Sure.
and wasn't willing to, or with somebody who assumed since they were from the same culture or wore the same color that they did understand, and
Right.
that was also offensive. But I think those are the kids where when you really work to understand them and you work to help them gain the skills that they want to gain, and you show that care, that you can see some just remarkable changes. And by the end, they're walking out for the last time like they've kept their nose out of the dirt for 6
Sure.
months, and they've
That's great.
built better relationships with family. We help kids build support systems. We believe in working on the strengths that you have and finding natural sources of support,
Sure.
not just you're relegated to therapy for the rest of your life, but we want to help them build on strengths. And usually by the time they leave, they're in pretty good shape to go on and be really healthy, productive adults because they've made changes for themselves, including loving themselves. And they don't always realize that by the time they're done, they've done some pretty therapeutic
Sure.
things and talked to that counselor
Yeah.
and made the connections and let some stuff out that was really meaningful for them.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And Nicole, why would you, and it's, it's a tricky question to answer, but why is mental health so important, to not only you, but, to everyone today?
It's so important. And I think the one silver lining, I'm always trying to find the positive, the one silver lining that I think came out of COVID was that all of a sudden, in the space of 1 year, with all the civil unrest and all the locked inside of that whole year, everyone was suffering.
Sure.
Everyone. And all of a sudden, people who were not used to mental health being a part of the conversation or having that big stigma around mental health, they were open because everyone was struggling. And so struggling became the norm, which
Sure.
is not great.
Right.
But that silver lining was that now people are looking for help and support. The rates of grief, depression, anxiety skyrocketed in the
Yeah.
Quad Cities. And like I said, people of color were disproportionately impacted. Women were disproportionately impacted. Kids, teenagers. And that's not right.
Right.
I think it's really, really important that we not just open that conversation, but have the resources ready to go. When people are looking for help, they want help now.
Yeah.
And that's a tough thing. They're willing to talk to somebody. We want to be right there to make that happen.
Right.
And so I think it's always been important, but now we're actually seeing more people who deserve it take advantage of that
Sure.
support.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And what would you say is your best piece of advice to someone who might be struggling with mental health or is a little hesitant to reach out?
Oh, that's a great question. I think the single best thing you can do is take good care of yourself,
Sure.
whatever that means for you. We really work to practice what we preach. But when you get on an airplane, they always say, when the oxygen masks fall in case of an emergency, you need to reach up and put your own on first.
Sure.
And then you take care of the people around you, because if you don't, you're not going to be able to breathe. And I think in the Quad Cities especially, we see all these parents who are trying so hard to make everything work for their kids. We
Yeah.
see so many people who are struggling, but you can't pour from an empty cup.
Right.
You have to put on your own mask first and take good care of yourself. Even if that's just, I think I've worked with plenty of moms who have said, all right, look, on your drive home, just take a break on the side of the road, like pause,
Yeah.
park at the park for 5 minutes and breathe.
Yeah.
That 5 minutes may not make a difference to the kid you're picking up from daycare, but it's going to make a difference for you.
Yeah.
And so being able to put yourself first, we're socialized to think that's really selfish, but it's not. That's how you get your cup to be full so
Right.
that you can take good care of others.
I like that comparison with the 5 minutes in the car. Because remember when I was younger, I'd never understand sometimes when my mom had the radio off. And I was like, why aren't we listening to music? And then now that I'm older, like I get it, because there's a lot of times I drive home with the radio off. And so I've told her, I get it now. You needed that 5-10 minute drive to just be quiet for a little bit, or not necessarily be quiet, but have quiet. So I totally get that aspect.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So.
Building in some peace
Yeah.
to your day.
Exactly. So I know we mentioned earlier, if people, if folks want to get in touch, they reach out through the website.
Absolutely. People
Awesome.
can reach out through the website. Our phone number is posted on there as well. So a lot of times we'll work with families that, maybe for one reason or another, it's easier to just talk on the phone. People
Sure.
can email us through our website, or our phone number is posted there and people can call. Or like I said, we get all kinds of referrals from schools. So folks can just tell their school counselor, hey, I'd like to talk to somebody, and that referral is going to come to us.
Well, that's awesome. Well, no, we certainly, appreciate all the things that you guys are doing, and we hope to help you guys keep, reaching out and helping other families. And so, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So often we hear about police responses involving subjects that are dealing with mental health issues. It's led to a shift in the processes some departments go through when it comes to responding to them. Our Jasmine Butler sits down with Davenport's police chief and a local mental health group about how they hope their new partnership can make a big difference both now and moving forward.
So joining me in Real Conversations today, I have Jen Kraft and Chief Bradle with the Davenport Police Department. Thank you both for stopping by today. So Jen, you started a pilot program with the Clinton City Police Department back in 2019 to have crisis responders go out with officers on calls. Can you tell us more about that program and what that consists of?
Sure. So in November of 2019, I received a phone call from the captain of patrol with Clinton PD saying we really need to do something different. My officers are responding to so many mental health calls, and we need to get creative and do something different. So a couple weeks later, myself, the captain of patrol, the fire chief, as well as the director of the communications and dispatch, all got together and met and developed this pilot project called the Co-Responder Model. So our vision was really to have bachelor's prepared or crisis clinicians responding with law enforcement or with fire to various 911 calls. And what we learned really quickly was it's definitely a needed resource. It was very, very successful, and we were able to secure funding with our data. We were able to secure funding to roll it out in Cedar, Clinton, Jackson, Muscatine, and Scott counties. So it's still at its infancy stages. There's so much room for growth. The co-responders are responding, like I said, with fire as well as with PD up in Clinton, because they do things, every county does things a little bit differently. And the data is showing that about consistently in the upper 90% every month, that those folks who are responding to in the co-responder model are able to remain safe in their community. But when I'm talking with law enforcement, they're telling me that historically those folks, we're going to jail, we're going to the hospital, or we're calling back day after day after day after day. So we're really focusing on working together as first responders to get the right response to the client at the right time. And we're seeing great success. Another really amazing thing that's come out of that, I mentioned those folks who are repeat callers who really, our communities don't necessarily know who else to call besides 911 when there's a crisis. So what we've been able to do is really offer more care to those individuals. We're going out when they're not calling, when they're not in crisis, and offering more service as well. So we're able to really get to the root of that problem. And we're seeing, like I said, I can't say enough, great success. And I'm very excited to see where it will go.
Yeah, I'm super excited for you too. And it's such a great thing that you guys are doing for the community. So talk to me, tell me, how did the community respond to this program?
So I think that there's still a lot of education to be had for the community, so they know that this is something that we're doing. The folks who are who are calling 911 and receiving the co-responder are doing great now. I can share so many success stories. I think that the community is able to recognize and is really excited that we're getting the right response at the right time. We're all on one team. I say all the time to various law enforcement folks that my client list is the same as yours. We are working with the same people, so we're on the same team because we have the same goals. I think as this continues to grow, the community is really going to see that we're all on the same team, and we really want what's best for our community.
I love that. So where's the program at now today?
So today we have, like I said, we do have funding for it to be in all 5 counties within our Eastern Iowa Mental Health and Disability Service region. It has opportunity for growth. We're not staffed completely as we'd want to be. We really would love to get this as 24/7, 365, but also in order to do it right, we need to take our time. We need to start small. We need to make data-driven decisions. But I've seen great success, and I have people reaching out saying, hey, I want this, I want this, I want this. It's really cool to see how it's working in our smaller communities as well. So Jackson County is much smaller, right, than Scott County. And they're not receiving as many mental health calls. So what we're doing in Jackson County and those smaller counties to meet the needs of the community is a little different. We're doing what we call community policing. We're going and talking with folks who are spending time at the park to offer them resources, to share with them what we're doing. We are knocking on doors for folks who we know would benefit from that support of that mental health team. And I'm just so excited to see how it'll grow.
Yes, I'm excited too. So let's turn to Chief Bladel. Chief, how does your department implement a program like the one Jen described here in Davenport?
Yeah, well, absolutely. I would kind of key on her excitement as well. You have to have good partners, and you have to understand the challenges that we're seeing as a community and how we're going to address those to get together collectively. And I think for law enforcement, we have an understanding that we continually respond and react to sometimes the same calls, and that we're not necessarily bringing a solution. So how can we, dive in a little deeper and work on those things? And mental health is a big response that we do in law enforcement within Davenport. And I know our officers, on a daily basis go on a number of calls and sometimes repeat calls. So we have to figure out a way that we can respond, not necessarily putting a Band-Aid on things, but how are we digging into things and working closely with our partners in order to come up with solutions. So we're not constantly responding, for one, but for two, we're actually reaching out at an individual level, getting people the help that they need.
So how was this program received?
So for ours, we partnered earlier this year and had a code response that is partnered up 2 days a week. So it's a little bit smaller of a program from Clinton and Muscatine, but our officers do ride. They ride with code responders for an 8-hour shift and go-to calls. Received from the community, received from the officers, it gives us the opportunity to truly spend time with people, right? Before, we are continually responding to calls and we don't have necessarily the time nor bring a solution. But for us, we get the opportunity to dive in, work directly with our co-responders and our social workers to help people. And I think that ultimately, in a roundabout things, in even giving them the help, it's bringing the right people to the right place.
Absolutely. So what kind of response have you seen from your officers and the public since we've been slowly implementing this to our community?
So I think it's twofold. I think it's both the same. I think we all understand that there's a need to do something differently. And as Ms. Kraft said, we have to try something different. If we continue to do the same things that we're doing, we're not really addressing the problems. A lot of times we like putting out blanket solutions when, again, we have to look at these things as individual impacts on how we can, better make their lives better.
Yes, I totally agree. So a question that I have for both of you guys is, moving forward, how do we make sure that we have this correct mindset towards mental health issues in all of our communities, or, the DMA as a whole?
I think for me, it's just important to recognize that every individual has a right to identify their crisis, and they're calling on the people who they know will respond. And that's reality. So it will be a huge culture shift if we want folks to call 988, which is the crisis line, as opposed to 911. It's going to take time and trust for individuals in the community to know that that is an option for them, because when you call 988, there is a response of crisis clinicians to where you live at times, if that need is there. So I think it's really just going to take the community to trust and to see the value in a different response. Because there are times where we're responding to a call and someone will say, no, I don't want to talk to this crisis clinician. I want to talk to this officer because I have that relationship with that person and I know that they're going to help me. So it's really just changing that mindset, which takes time. And we all have to, everyone in the community has to understand that someone who's in a mental health crisis has that right to be in that crisis. And they don't know what to do, so they're calling 911. They know and trust that someone will be there to help them.
What I love the most is that you said you're building those right relationships. I absolutely love that, because I think that that's what's important, and people know who to call. Like, okay, no, this is a true emergency where officers need to be involved, or I know that I can call this number here and it's my safe space, and they know how to help me correctly. So I love that.
Something else that's been really amazing to watch happen as we've developed this program is the relationship between the provider side, the social work side, and with law enforcement. They become so close and had strong relationships. My team who helped with the pilot project shared, I have learned so much about what law enforcement do, and they love it. It filled their cup to be able to respond with law enforcement. And I've also heard officers tell me, I had no idea that this is the work that you can do. I had no idea that sometimes it just takes sitting down and taking your time. I just had no idea. And they're starting to call each other off shift as well, to bounce ideas off each other about things that happened in their day. And it's been really, really amazing to watch.
Yeah. And I would say collectively, it brings that credibility as a community, as a response that we're all here to help. A lot of times you'll get, it's a pretty, stigma. A lot of people are fearful of even, reaching out for mental help. And then when you're sitting maybe just a police officer who doesn't have the full experience of understanding those things, they have a bad experience initially and they don't necessarily follow up with the help on that. But I think collectively, as Ms. Graff said, that's the key to this. The relationship piece is the key to this. For our officers, we had an opportunity to expand our training, right? Our training for crisis intervention responses, de-escalation, and fully understanding, I think, collectively, too, that sometimes at a call, it's not a police call. And we should be able to take a step back and understand that we're not the ones that are leading this call. We're here as a support mechanism, but it's not a police call for us to solve. So I think for the credibility with the community and understanding how to continually expand these processes is to understand that we're all here, we're all on the same page, we all have the same goal, and we're all here to help. And how we do that is together and through those relationship building.
Chief, we've already kind of answered my next question, but where do you both see this going in the future?
So we hope, again, I think for us, we're just scratching the surface. There is so much opportunity here for us to expand within public safety for Davenport. And we, I would say on an average are around 300 calls a year, various calls regarding people in mental crisis. And we want to be able to make sure that we have those streamlined processes in place. And the people we have here do a phenomenal job and they work, but we can figure out how to bring that to people a little bit better. I think always a opportunity to improve, but I think we can expand that out.
Yeah. When we were touching base in the lobby when we got here, we both talked about we have so many opportunities and we're both very excited about where those would go. I don't think I have an answer. I don't know where it's going to go because I didn't expect it to be here. You can tell, I'm so very excited with how it started with a late night phone call and it's evolved into this. So I think we're a model for the rest of the state in what we're doing and the ideas we have. And I think that, like Chief said, in Davenport, we're really scratching the surface. But I think there's opportunities to really train, dispatch on when can you dispatch just the co-responder? When can you dispatch just mobile crisis? So I don't know where it will go, but I'm really excited to see where it will go.
Yeah. Really big on educating those about those different numbers that they can call to.
Yeah.
So, Jen, with that being said, there are a few resources out there for people with mental health issues. Can you share some of those programs with us?
Sure. So there's so many. How much time do you have? I know it can get very confusing to your point of which number to call. Who do I call? I need this help. So our Eastern Iowa Crisis System has really tried to eliminate a lot of those barriers and a lot of those questions, as well as build a safety net for people in the community who historically have fallen through the cracks. And we all know people who have historically fallen through the cracks. So we're very, very lucky that we have our mental health and disability service region really believes in the work that we're doing and really wants us to continue to move forward. So we have Mobile Crisis, which is right now it's run by Foundation 2. It is a completely free service. So that's another amazing thing about our crisis system is we don't care about what insurance you have. We've tried to eliminate, again, those barriers. So anyone can call 988 or they can call a Your Life Iowa crisis line. They're both going to ring to the same crisis clinician company who's going to answer that, which is Foundation 2. And if it's someone who needs to have a crisis clinician respond to them in person, calling 988 will get that crisis response. So if I call 988 from here, let's say when I leave here, I have a panic attack and I don't feel like I can safely drive and I need some support, I can call 988. They'll come out, build that relationship and rapport with me, safety plan, see if they can help de-escalate me. If they cannot, they might drive me to where I need to go, or they can take me to the hospital if that's where I need to go. And it's just 2 crisis clinicians who come in plain clothing, hanging out and helping to build that relationship. And again, having that time, they don't have to worry about responding to that next call. They have that time to sit down. So that's a really easy resource to access. And we really focus heavily on that self-identified crisis. So the call center is not going to say, okay, well, you're not at a high enough crisis for this response. If someone feels they need that response, they can say, I really need this response. Mm-hmm. We also have peer drop-in centers for folks to go spend time at. It's completely free. It's walk-in only. One is at the Carroll Center, which is Rivera French on Harrison. And we have one in Clinton County as well as in Muscatine. Mm-hmm. We have 2 peer-run respite houses, which are the only 2 in the whole state of Iowa, which is pretty phenomenal. One is in Muscatine, one is in DeWitt. We have crisis stabilization residential, and there's a lot. I could talk about it all day. If people want more information, we do have a website. We have a Facebook page, Eastern Iowa Mental Health and Disability Service Region, and we also have a website. And if you just Google Eastern Iowa Mental Health and Disability Service Region, it will be up there. Yes. And then our care coordination, I got to talk easily about that. And sorry to any services I've forgotten, but our care coordination, I think, is really the spider web, right? To help those individuals navigate all of these services. So if someone calls mobile crisis, or if a co-responder comes out to meet with an individual, they get sent a referral for care coordination. Then a care coordinator calls them the next day and comes out to the home or the community or wherever they want to meet to really evaluate what's going on and to get to the root of that crisis. So maybe we're linking folks up with a therapist. Maybe we're working to get them in for medication quicker. Maybe we're helping them find financial assistance to pay their rent so they're not getting evicted. Or maybe we're helping them find affordable childcare for their kiddo, skill building services for their kiddo. So we really are looking at that whole person approach, because we all know that there's so much that goes into a crisis, more than just how your brain is wired, right? Yeah, so it's really cool what we get to do. So we got a lot of great programs out there. We do.
Well, Jen, Chief, thank you guys so much for joining Real Conversations. I hope that we were able to educate our viewers and let them learn something about all the different community programs that's out there for them and what we're doing here in Davenport.
I thank you for putting this out there. It's a very important topic.
Yeah.
But again, it's a topic that we're going to continue to expand and work with our communities on to make sure that we're getting the right people, the right places. So it's very important. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much. Yes.
One of the more underrated ways to deal with internal struggle is getting in touch with nature. And one man here in the Quad Cities is providing a unique space for Black men to do exactly that. Evan Denton has that story.
Break those generational curses and things that are in our everyday life that we go through and continue to get over as Black men.
Each Sunday morning at 11 o'clock, a small group of Black men meet at Black Hawk Park for a weekly nature walk.
It being a space where we kind of give ourselves the ability to be vulnerable around ourselves, really talk about stuff that's really kind of going on and not feeling a sense of judgment, not feeling a sense of like apprehension, but just having it be a space where like we can really talk, about things that are past surface.
The group is called Black Men Heal. Heal standing for heal, empathize, advocate, and love.
More comfortable space to talk about everything that's going on with me as a man. A lot of times we don't go to each other as men and talk about like what's going on in life and just in general. So just being able to have guys that you respect, guys you get along with, and guys who, look like you and have walked through the same things that you walk through in life and just bond off each other has been really amazing.
One walk through the woods at a time, the group is helping to turn over a new leaf when it comes to therapy within the Black community.
It's describing kind of like a patriarchy that like we've all kind of like conditioned ourselves to, like of how like a Black male is someone who doesn't talk about things, doesn't express things, and like in turn we kind of struggle with ourselves mentally and don't even know about it, unless we're like really conscious of it. So I think just with this group really kind of like understanding that like us doing this work is actually a big role of like undoing patriarchy that's kind of been done unto us.
I have a 4-year-old son, so for me it's just about trying to grow as a man and learn as much as I can and passing it down to him and just help him grow.
For Real Conversations, I'm Evan Denton.
And for more information on all of these resources we discussed, you can visit our news app and website. And of course, a reminder, there is help available if you're struggling and need assistance. 24/7, 365. You can dial the National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. That number is 988.